Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Bella Gamer, and after a lot of trials and tribulations, I'm here to bring you the Exemplar today. We're going to do the class deep dive. I don't think it's going to be shorter than the Animists. And so, here we have yet another charisma based martial. Or actually, not. It's actually a strength dex. Now, I did say in my prior video they were charisma based, but that's not my fault. Blame Paizo. Paizo was the one who sent a newsletter, and this is what they wrote for Exemplar. A charisma based divine warrior possessing their own divinity spark. That is. That is. What was I supposed to do? I was misled. They don't use charisma for almost anything. A few of their feats could use charisma, but it's definitely not a main feature of the class. So, it's not charisma based. Yay! It's strength and dex. And a lot of people, me included, feel like Exemplar is just a really good class, especially when you place it next to Animus. That is a little bit here and there. Animus is cool, don't get me wrong. I like what Animus has to offer. But Exemplar is just really good, and not only that, but answered my prayers for actually a somewhat simpler class that people can, sink their teeth into. The irony that it's a simpler class that's also a rare in rarity is unfortunate, to say the least. Just because I'm sure that rare tag will make some GMs second guess whether a player should have it. And not only that, but the whole concept is that you are a demigod like individual. So, it has a different feel to the game than a lot of the other classes tend to. I don't think this is necessarily a problem. I actually super love this class. There's just those, slight complications. So let's go ahead and take a look at it, shall we? Need more water. All right. So this is a strength dexterity class, which is good. That means it's a martial class that lets you do martial as you want. And it gives you 10 plus your constitution modifier and health, which is solid. It's kind of rare that we see that, honestly. I think the last class released that got 10 was the Summoner, if I'm not mistaken, which is a little crazy to me. It makes sense for Summoner because their Eidolon is just a straight up martial character. But yeah. So 10 con or 10 plus con, not bad. We can look at their proficiencies here on the side. They have pretty standard, 2 expert saving throws, normal for martials. They have lesser skills than most other classes, only getting religion and 2 plus intelligence modifier. Intelligence is also not a very really necessary skill or attribute for this particular class. So, they're just not gonna have a lot of skills, which I find is sad. Skills really make characters a little bit more diverse. And yeah. They are trained in all simple and martial weapons as well as unarmed attacks, pretty standard. The one thing I do find super interesting here is they are only trained in light armor. That is very interesting indeed. I don't know if that's going to stay for the final class. I think they'll eventually get up to medium, but I do find it very interesting. There are some ways to mitigate this. If you don't mitigate it in that way, you're going to be playing a very squishy martial class, because if you want to go strength, then you're going to want heavier armor. But since you can't wear anything heavier than light armor, then this class kind of skews dexterity, which is very unfortunate in my opinion. I think medium armor would give it a good middle ground where you could have a few points in dex and a few points in strength and be able to make it work out a lot better. But yeah, so that is interesting. I do think that's going to end up changing by the time the class releases. But if it stays light armor, that's going to be very interesting. I feel like a lot of people are going to feel forced to go Dex, though. Even though you don't have to, obviously. I, I don't know. It's just one of those things. All right, so there's a big sidebar here talking about unique features. And we'll go over these as they come up. And I'll let you guys know, but I'll do it in a more contextual way to make it easier to understand. So, divine sparks and icons. This whole section indicates that you get 3 icons. You get a weapon icon, a body icon, and a worn icon or a garment icon. I believe it's called worn. And these are your divine items. Now, as an action, you're going to get the shift imminence, which is a singular action and it switches which icon is essentially activated. So kind of consider this similar to the Thaumaturge. If you're not familiar with Thaumaturge, they also get like multiple gadgets that they can utilize, but they have to be holding it. The idea behind the exemplar is that they're wielding all their icons at the same time. The clothes they're wearing, their body, and their weapon are all considered divine objects that they can put their imminence in. The imminence, more or less, what this is just a feature that you get while you have it equipped. It's really easy. It's just a passive effect that you have while your weapon or armor or whatever is currently equipped. So imminence is just considered the passive benefits of your icon, and you only get your passive benefits when you have the imminence or when you put your divine spark in it. So to kind of make it all nice and easy, you have 3 items. You can, at the start of combat, put your divine spark in one of these items, whether it's your body or a part of your body, whether it's your clothes or your weapon. And then as an action, you can switch which one is currently activated. While they're activated, they provide you with a standard like passive effect, which we'll get to here in a little bit. Then we have Spark Transcendence. You can only do either of these, I should mention, once per round. So you can only shift imminence once per round and spark transcendence once per round. Spark transcendence and the sidebar up here, more or less what it just tells you is the transcendence is the active effects that you get. So for instance, say you have a spear that does does an extra effect on critical hit, but then you can chuck it and do a big line AoE attack as the transcendence. That's essentially what imminence and transcendence kind of relate to each other. And when you use transcendence, your divine spark is then ejected from the item and goes into one of your other 2 icons, up to 4 actually icons you can have. So this is the general features. This is everything that Exemplar is. You get passive benefits, and then you can activate your different icons to do a effect of some kind. And actually, it's a pretty good system, and I think I really, really like it because the imminence is like an effect that you can choose if you like the standard effects. You can swap to a different passive if you like it, or you can even swap to all 3 of your icons if you swap your icon, swap to one of your other 2 icons, and then use the transcendence of the other one, and then put your spark in the third one. So you can actually get through all your icons in the singular round. Not that you're likely to do that, and you can ping pong between 2 of your icons if that's just the way you want to do it. But when you use transcendence, it immediately leaves. So the thing with the transcendence is if it leaves your weapon, you no longer get the benefits from like critical strikes or whatever. So that's something you want to consider when you're using the transcendence. Typically, I think how it's going to go is that you're going to not use your shift imminence all that often unless there's a specific effect you want at a certain time. Most likely every round what you're going to do is you're just going to either ping pong between 2 icons, or you're going to go through a rotation where every round you're going to use a transcendence to spark into another one. You could also technically spark transcendence and then shifts back to the weapon or whatever you used to get that effect back. That's a huge action load, and oftentimes that would be everything you would do in a round, and not something I highly recommend. So hopefully I made that all make sense. I guess the TLDR is Spark Transcendence active ability, Imminence passive ability. You're either going to work in rotations or you're going to favor one or two of your icons more and kind of ping pong between them a lot. All right. Another really interesting feature, Humble Strikes. It's when you're wielding any simple weapon, increase the damage size of that weapon by 1 step. I find this super interesting. I do like it though, because I think it makes a lot of the simple weapons kind of just don't get a lot of attention because if you're a martial character, you're going to use martial weapons. They have on average more traits and better damage than simple weapons. That's just how the balancing goes. Humble Strikes kind of balances that a little bit so you can use some of the simpler weapons to do some interesting things. I don't know if it's going to necessarily make simple weapons that much more viable, but I do like Humble Strikes as a feature. You're a demigod. Everything you use is going to be dangerous. So even if it's just a stick, it's going to hurt if you smack someone with it. All right. At 3rd level, you get a root epithet. The epithet is your essentially like your moniker that grows with you as you adventure. And it's it's a modular style class that you you get like a first name, a middle name, and a last name as you go through your adventures that give you different things. So for instance, Brave, you become trained in athletics, so you do get an additional skill, but only one. And after you spark transcendence in your body icon, so when you use the active effect of your body icon, uh, your body carries you forward, allowing you to stride up to half your speed in a straight line towards one enemy of your choice. So I really like this, and what it does is it gives Spark Transcendence extra action efficiency, which makes it really good. You're going to want to cycle through a lot of your icons this way. Now, I will say your first epithet is going to always focus on your body. So let's go ahead and read them, and you'll see what I mean. So, Cunning. This lets you become trained in deception. And after you use your Transcendence, you can feint as a free action. Another really, really good one. I think both of these are very solid and they both work really, really well. I think the biggest benefit is the skill proficiency, honestly, because it will be more determinant of your playstyle. Like, if you're going to be tripping enemies, doing whatever, Brave is probably going to be the way you're going to want to go. Cunning is going to be if you're going to be using feinting a lot more and probably finesse weapons. So I like this. This is two defining ones. The other two are not that great, but I do love the idea behind them. And they also have some really powerful effects. So Mournful is really funny because essentially your character has a tragic story and you're shouldering the burdens of those who left it up to you, essentially. I love the story behind it. You're trained in diplomacy, and when you spark transcendence for your body icon, uh, one enemy within 30 feet becomes dazzled as tears or memories dance in their eyes, seeing you as you fight, for what's right. This is a mental emotion effect. The enemy remains dazzled until the start of your next turn. And the crazy thing about this is this just happens. It says right here, when you spark transcendence of your body icon, the act has a bittersweet poignancy to it, making one enemy within 30 feet dazzled as tears or memories dance in their eyes. This is a mental and emotional effect. The enemy remains dazzled until the start of your next turn. No save, no nothing. I think this will get a save in the full release. I feel like constantly making the boss cry if the boss is, your target inner combat is kind of silly, and I think that is a really bad way players can easily cut tension. And there's a lot of ways you can make it a lot better for the sake of the villain, but I feel like it just needs to be a save. Honestly, I feel like Bedazzled is a very powerful effect, so I love it. I think it's great, but it is a little silly. Next is Radiance. This is another really good one. It also allows you to become trained in diplomacy, same as the Mournful one. And when you use your body icon, you inspire an ally within 30 feet to push on, restoring hit points equal to 2 plus double your level. This is a mental emotional effect, and the ally is in temporary immune for 10 minutes. So, Radiant's really good if you want to play more of a support paladin style, in my eyes, as what it allows you to do is 2 plus double your level is a lot of good hit points, honestly. Until like maybe no, even at level 10 it's pretty good. It might start falling off around level 15 or something like that. But I think it's always gonna just be really good. I think the math is pretty tight on this one. At 30 feet range is pretty good, honestly, all things considered. I like this one. I think of all of them, Radiant is my favorite as far as a unique effect. But I do think that if I was to make a character, I'd use Brave or Cunning a lot more often, as it just allows more action efficiency in combat. Well, Radiant does technically have action efficiency, as it allows you to do an extra effect. It's not an extra effect that necessarily benefits your play, but your allies. And while that's good, I think that depending on your style of character, that just might honestly not fit. In any regard, Radiant is really, really good. So continuing on, 5th level, you get Spirit Striking, which is really cool. You add additional spirit damage with weapons and unarmed attacks, in which you're expert. This is essentially the weapon specialization, though it is specifically doing spirit damage instead, which I think is very interesting. I think I like the way it goes. At level 7, you get your second epithet. This gives you an additional effect that works off of your weapon, I believe. Let's see here. Yes, it is your weapon. So, let's go ahead and read them. Born of the Bones of the Earth. What a cool name. I absolutely love it. You gain the Hefty Hauler feat, so this one they each give you extra feats as well. Really, really good. You can choose for any spirit damage dealt by your exemplar, which means from your spirit striking. To manifest instead as levitating segments, stones, or bones, yada yada. You can change any spirit damage you deal into bludgeoning damage that gains the earth trait. So that can be really good in some situations. And of course, it says you can choose for any spirit damage you deal. So it doesn't even have to be like every time. You can choose sometimes it's spirit, sometimes it's bludgeoning. Whatever works in the situation. I really like this one, and it makes it very dynamic for the use of proccing enemy weaknesses. Really good. So your weapon gains a new imminence. For this one, when you critically succeed on a strike and the target of the critical hit is standing on the surface of Earth, you drive them down mired in the ground. So you just whap, smack them down, and they embed in the ground. I absolutely love it. The target is immobilized and must succeed at an escape attempt against your class DC to end the immobilization. The creature doesn't become stuck if it's incorporeal, a liquid, or otherwise can escape easily. So if it has like a burrow speed, for instance. So overall, I like this. And also something to mention, if any imminence effects or even transcendent effect would give you a different effect on your critical hits, they replace your weapon's critical specialization. So that's very important to mention, is that if anything changes your critical hit, it replaces any critical specialization you have for that weapon. Important to know. So I really like this one. It's also just really powerful. It immediately immobilizes the enemy with no save. And they have to escape to end your DC. Now it's only on critical hits. So that I can give a little bit of a pass. But as a critical hit, it's really devastating. Granted, if you consider other weapons that can like knock an enemy prone, which I would say is even worse than this, it's not that bad. I just want to say it is actually really powerful, as there's no save, and they have to beat your class DC to break out, Well, that's not going to be necessarily hard, especially for, higher level enemies, bosses. It is going to be troublesome for like mook enemies. So I like it. I think this is a really good eminence effect. And let's look at the transcendent effect. So wounds the world, another great one. Two actions. Most transcendent effects are going to be two actions, so keep that in mind. Your weapon pierces the ground below and opens up a jagged rift. This is a 60-foot line attack. Each enemy standing in that line needs to make a reflex DC against your class DC or fall prone. And if they fall prone, they take an additional 2d6 bludgeoning damage, and this increases to 4d6 at 12th level and 6d6 at 17th level. Really good. I don't think line attacks are super good, honestly, in my opinion. Plus, you immediately your weapon no longer is your icon after you use a transcendent. So I like the imminence ability. I don't know if the transcendent is really good for this one in my eyes. But also the line that you create becomes difficult terrain or greater difficult terrain if there's already difficult terrain. So this is a good battlefield divider. Actually, now I say that even just for the utility benefits and the chance of knocking enemies down, I do like this one. I just, again, it's kind of just one of those things. Though being able to knock enemies prone in a big area, even if it's a line, I think is really good. Overall, the Born of the Bones of the Earth is really good. Restless as the Tides, another really good one. This one gives you another critical effect. For when you succeed on a strike, you deal splash damage equal to the number of weapon damage dice to all creatures within 10 feet. The splash damage is bludgeoning damage and it has the water traits. Now, also with Restless of the Tides, you can choose to replace any spirit damage you deal with bludgeoning damage, and it gains the water trait. Very important. There's actually a variety of features that allow elemental effects. I should have mentioned this last time, but water is one that sticks out to me as their witches have a really good hex around it. So this is actually a really good one just for the fact that splash damage on critical hit is really good, and the splash damage is equal to the damage die, equal to the number of weapon damage dice to all creatures within 10 feet. Now, I'm assuming you can exclude yourself from this, and it does suck because it does state all creatures. So if there's any allies nearby, they can also take your splash damage. Granted, there is a cloak that can, it's the backfire cloak, I think, and it negates splash damage. Something you might want to keep in mind for your teammates. It's not a ton, but it's just something that I would like to keep in mind. Uh, the Transcendent ability, Seize Claim. I love the name. It's a really good one. A roaring whirlpool swirls around you, gathering your enemies together to receive your divine punishment. All enemies within 60 feet must succeed a fortitude save against your class DC or be swept up to 15 feet in another location of your choice within the affected area and become off guard until the start of your next turn. This is forced movement. When you strike one enemy, you then strike one enemy within your reach. So unlike the Wound the World, which is just a line AoE attack, this one is a big move for all enemies in 60 feet, which is nuts. But you also get to strike an enemy within your reach. I just love the idea of you just sweep everyone up in a whirlpool and you strike them. And because Transcendent doesn't actually remove the icon spark until after the ability, you actually still get the benefits of your imminence for this strike. So this is one of the few times where you get to use your Transcendent ability and your imminence in almost the same strike if you manage to critically strike that enemy. Overall, this is really good, and this makes for a very oppressive bully build, as 60 feet is absolutely massive. Standing in the middle of a battlefield, you'll be able to move most enemies up to 15 feet in a direction you want, and that's real devastating. I think this one is really good, and this one only affects enemies, not your allies as well. So you can position your allies, you can save your allies with it. It's just really good. I like Restless Tides, I think, a bit more than Born of Bones of the Earth, even though Bones of the Earth I think is the cooler one by design. I think Restless Tides, just mechanically speaking, is really good. Peerless Under Heaven, Song Wukong. You can change any of your spirit damage to bludgeoning, slashing, or piercing damage. This is actually really cool. I actually really like this one. So what its aesthetic is you choose for any spirit damage you dealt by exemplar abilities to instead manifest as powerful impacts, cutting slashes, or temporarily conjured physical armaments. So even if you're going unarmed, you punch and the enemy is struck by spears, like manifested by your icon. That's very, very cool. I absolutely love it. Now, if dealt as part of a weapon attack, this damage is the same type as the weapon. Otherwise, you choose your choice of bludgeoning, slashing, or piercing damage. Your weapon icon gains the following abilities. I don't know why I said that, obviously. Imminence. Divine skill at arms guides your weapon, granting it the critical specialization effect for that weapon group. So normally you don't get the critical specialization for weapons. The one thing about this Eminence I don't like is that there's a lot of like free archetype stuff that you can do that give you critical specialization. So this Eminence might just become completely ineffective for you, which kind of sucks. But if you don't have anything like that, it's great because critical specialization just gives you extra stuff when you critical with an enemy. It's kind of tame compared to some of the other critical effects, in my opinion, like rooting an enemy in the ground or what was the other one? Splash damage. But I think this one's okay. I think the big benefit though is Reap the Field, which is the transcendent ability. Now, it's a transcendent ability that requires that your previous action was a successful strike and you've not yet rolled damage. So the second you successfully hit an enemy, you can decide to use an action to strike another enemy. What to do? You stride up to half your speed and make an attack against a different foe using the same multi-attack penalty. If your second attack is a success, you deal damage to both creatures. If you miss, you deal damage to neither. So it's a big gamble. But the thing I like about it is if it's your first attack and you successfully strike, not only does this allow you to move and strike another enemy, but you get another move, another strike for one action, and you're just as likely to hit as you were the other enemy. The best part about this, you hit the boss, you can essentially just go over to a mook enemy and strike them because you're way more likely to hit them. And you're likely to strike the second one even more and do damage to both of them. This gives you an extra stride. This does a lot. And it gives you essentially multiple attacks for at your max attack penalty. This is really good, actually, if you're going a dex build and you're going, or not dex, if you're going the cunning style and you're doing a lot of fainting. That is the dex one. What am I talking about? You're doing a lot of fainting because you can feint, strike, and then reap the field and strike another enemy at your multiple attack penalty. And the first target was much more likely to be hit. I like this one. I think this is a little bit more of an advanced one, and I don't feel like it has the same oomph as some of the other epithets, but in my personal opinion, it is probably one of the stronger ones and works really well if you know how to utilize it really well. So Peerless Under Heaven, really, really good. The last one, Whose Cry is Thunder. Another really great one. Any bonus to saving throws you gain from any exemplar ability also applies against effects with the electricity trait, and any resistances applies to the electricity damage as well. So this one is a slightly different one. It gives you bonuses. I don't think the other ones give you bonuses like that. True, too, right? Nope, this is just the physical damage one. And this one, oh, you got a feat with this one. Oh, I guess they all don't get feats. I didn't even think about that. Oh, I forgot to mention Restless as the Tide also gives you Underwater Marauder. Not a very handy feat because you need, to be in water for it. But when you need Underwater Marauder, it's really good. So, yeah, so Peerless Under Heaven, I guess it just gives you the ability to do extra damage. Yeah, that's very interesting. The Peerless Under Heaven, I feel like, is missing that feature. Maybe that's the balancing part because I did say it was stronger. I didn't think about that. So, Whose Cries Thunder is really good. The extra resistances, bonuses against electricity damage is good as well. This one I think is really cool because instead of spirit damage, you can instead do electricity, replacing the spirit trait with the electricity trait. That's really good. Elemental damage is always really, really solid. The imminence effect is when you critically strike an enemy. Lightning strikes another enemy within 30 feet, dealing 4d6 electricity damage with a basic reflex saving throw. This damage increases to 7d6 at 12th and 10d6 at 17th level. That's really good, and because it's based on the basic reflex saving throw, it it's got some slightly weaker effects compared to some of the other ones, like splash damage, which just automatically hits every enemy. But because enemies are not likely to crit succeed, they're always going to take some damage. And I guarantee the some damage they're going to take is going to be more than the splash damage. Granted, this one only strikes a single target that's within 30 feet. So you don't have the area potential. But I think overall, Whose Cries Thunder has a better eminence ability if you're just trying to output damage on the battlefield. The Transcendent ability is Judgment from Clear Skies. It's 2 actions as the electricity and sonic trait. And what it essentially does is you make a range strike with your icon against a creature within your weapon's first range increment or 30 feet, whichever is further. If the strike is successful, the target and each creature within 15 feet of it must make a fort save against your class DC or take 1d6 electricity damage and 1d6 sonic damage from the mighty thunderclap of the weapon. This damage increases to 2d6 at 12th level and 3d6s at 17th level. Your icon then returns to your hand. Now, it's very weird wording on this one, and I think it needs to be cleaned up. Make a ranged strike is, I guess it's because this isn't capitalized, that because range strikes are different than strikes. Range strikes requires that you're using a weapon that has a range strike, for instance, a thrown weapon. I believe this is kind of a Thor one. The intent is that if you have a melee weapon, you're throwing a melee weapon, or if it is a ranged weapon, you're hitting any enemy within your first range increment. The really cool thing is if you're using a ranged weapon as your transcendent weapon for this, the first range increment is huge. That means you can target any enemy and then just hit an area of 30 feet around them to create a sonic boom. Imagine shooting a gun at a target and then just a massive explosion at their location. That's really cool. Now it is a fort save against your class DC. It is basic fort save. So it is if they succeed, they take half. If they crit succeed, they take none. And if they crit fail, they take double. So really good. This is a really good way to do a lot of damage. Makes sense why it's 2 actions. I think Whose Cries Thunder has a really, really good transcendent ability, especially if you want to go as a ranged exemplar. All right, so we go up looking at some of their proficiencies. I think they get their weapon proficiency. No, okay. That's fine. They get greater spirit striking, so this is just the crit specialization or the greater weapon specialization that most classes get. And then they get their sovereignty epithet at level 15. This is the one that goes to their worn garb, and they're mostly auras. So Teacher of Heroes is a very interesting one. You get an aura that is 30 feet, and whenever you fail or deal no damage with a strike against an enemy within your icon's aura, you can attempt a recall knowledge check against the target and instantly transmit any knowledge you gain as a roll to every ally within your aura. The first piece of knowledge you gain when recalling knowledge in any way is always the enemy's immunities. If they have no immunities, it's their greater resistances. If they have no greater resistances, it's any resistances. And if they don't have any resistances or anything, you learn their lowest saving throw. This is a really good effect, but as I mentioned before, not many things require intelligence. So, I mean, you can get a fair amount of intelligence by level 15, even if you didn't start with really any. It's just kind of one of those features that I feel like kind of clashes with the class a little bit. I do like the idea of it, and I think this is a really good idea. And the fact that the recall knowledge is very poignant. It's about finding the enemy's weaknesses or their greatest strengths is very good. And the fact that you transmit that information, even if you guys can't talk to each other, is really good. The transcendent ability is called Complete the Hero's Journey, which I love the narrative lore behind that. So for 2 actions, you declare an enemy within the area to be your heroic test. As long as that enemy remains within your icon's aura, which is 30 feet, it deals an additional 10 spirit damage to you with each successful strike or spell it targets against you. Whenever it deals spirit damage to you, each ally within the aura can attempt a reactive strike against it, even if they don't normally have that reaction. If an ally within your aura successfully saves the enemy with a reactive strike, they immediately gain hit points equal to their level, which persist for 1 minute. Gain temporary hit points if I didn't say that. So this one's weird, and I think it doesn't work as the writer intended. Because when you're supposed to use your transcendent ability, your spark jumps to another icon that you're wearing. And it says you declare an enemy within the area of your worn icon's aura to be a heroic test. As long as the enemy remains within your worn icon's aura, your aura would technically end as soon as you use this ability, because the aura is based on your imminence, which you only get when you have your your uh your spark in your object. And let me double check that just so I don't sound dumb, because I always miss something. At any given time, your divine spark can rest within one of your icons, empowering it beyond mortal abilities. As long as your divine spark is empowering one of your icons, the icon gains the divine trait and grants you the benefits of its imminence. Yeah. So I don't know if this one works as intended. It should say as long as the enemy remains within 30 feet of you or whatever, it deals 10 spirit damage to you with each successful strike. And whenever it allows everyone to. Oh no, this is a very weird one. Honestly, I like the idea, but this also kind of benefits more of a tank build. And as we've seen before, there's not a lot of they can wear light armor at most, and they get light armor mastery, but at level 19. So I don't know. This one's very strange, and I don't think it works as intended rule wise. Unless I'm missing something here, which I don't know. Yeah, as soon as the transcendent ability works, the aura is supposed to come off because that's very strange. Uh, unless their intent is if you need to activate your aura before they get these effects, it just it's very strange. I don't know how that's supposed to work. All right, last ruler. It's a okay one. The imminence ability is anyone within 30 feet of your worn icon. When an enemy within the aura fails an attack against you, you can attempt to intimidate them or to demoralize them as a free action as you rebuke them for their foolish attempt against you. That's okay. The problem with demoralize is you can only demoralize an enemy once every 10 minutes or something like that, or once a minute, unless you get feats around this. So that kind of requires feats for this particular one. Not that that's a bad thing, especially because skill feats are one of those things that people, I feel like, just want to pick. Sometimes you're like, oh, what skill feat do I pick? I don't know, just select something, So I don't think that's bad. But it is kind of like a mandatory feat if you take the last ruler, if you want to get the most benefit out of this imminence ability. I do like the idea of someone strikes you and you just stare them down, or you're just try again, and they're just intimidated by your sheer prowess in front of them, pretty much. It's very, very cool, but somewhat problematic mechanically. You can only get the benefit once per enemy unless you take special feats. The transcendent ability is a little bit better. Kneel before greatness. 2 actions. You demand the fealty that is your rightful due. All enemies within your worn icon's aura must succeed a will save against your class DC or immediately kneel, dropping prone as a free action. When enemies who critically fail their save against the effect Also takes spirit damage equal to twice your level, which is pretty devastating as you get this at level 15. So if an enemy ever crit fails this, they just take an immediate 30 damage, which is pretty nutty, honestly. I like this ability. It's a big AoE effect, and it's not based on demoralize, so you can do this anytime that you get your worn icon activated. But this is just this is really good. It's really good for your team, but it's another like kind of supporting one, so keep in mind it's good for striking an enemy who's next to you, but for everyone else, I don't know. That actually is a really good point though. This works really well with a weapon icon because once you use Kneel Before Greatness, you can shift your icon to your, or you can shift your spark to your weapon icon and strike an enemy who's prone before you, and then have a higher chance of critting them, getting their special effect. So, Last Ruler, I think, works really well, especially with Peerless Under Heaven. Oh, God. Thief of Moonlight. This one just blows other one out of the water. It's nuts. It's absolutely crazy. This is probably one of the most powerful effects in the game as far as like the Exemplar is concerned. So you get a 30-foot aura, like everyone else. Whenever an enemy within the aura fails an attack roll against you, you snatch a fragment of the light from their eyes, making them dazzled until the end of your next turn. That's crazy. There's no save or anything. Just bam, instant dazzle when an enemy misses you. Granted, they're not likely to attack you much more than one more time, maybe twice if you provoke an attack of opportunity from them. But still, that's really good. In 30 feet, that's pretty massive. That's a good way to, and Dazzle just helps everyone. So I that's really, really good. And then all that shines belongs to me. Oh my god, this ability is so good. So for 2 actions, you become invisible for 1 round and then stride. Each enemy adjacent to you at any point during this movement must succeed at a fort save against your class DC or become blinded for 1 minute. If an enemy critically fails this save, they become blinded permanently, and for each creature blinded by this effect, the duration for the greater invisibility, because I believe this is oh, it's just invisible. It doesn't say using the invisibility spell. So yeah, you just are invisible. So for each creature blinded by this effect, the duration of the granted invisibility increases by 1 round as you hide yourself in their stolen light. I love this one. It's so mystical. It's so mythical. It's so good. It's just you're stealing light from their eyes. That's so good. And you can just be invisible for a really long time. That's and they become blind. I mean, it's been dependent on fort save, and bosses are not likely to fail fort saves. But still, that's really good. Thief of Moonlight's really good. I have to say, this one's probably my favorite of all the epithets that you can get. This one's just really, really cool. It blew me away the first time I read it. Uh, Deific Mastery gives you master proficiency in your class DC, which is actually kind of rare. Not many marshals, but some do get master proficiency in their class DC. And I did mention this before, but if you ever get access to your to domain spells, which you can pick up through a feat, you actually get up to master proficiency in your spell DCs and spell attacks for your domain spells, which is really good. All right. So now that we've kind of seen all the general features, let's look at the actual icons. These are the icons you can select. There's 3 types, and each of them do something a little different. So starting off with the body icons, which I will mention, your first epithet will empower your body icon, so keep that in mind. Eye-catching spot, you have a beauty mark or a dazzling smile. And while your body icon is infected, and I have to mention as well. So you notice here that each of the epithets give you an imminence and transcend ability for your icon. These are in addition to what your icons already do. So Thief of Moonlight adds its eminence effect to the your worn icon, and you can choose which transcendent ability you want to use, which is really good. Now, eye-catching spot. Your imminence ability is you distract foes, imposing a -1 circumstance penalty to melee attack rolls against you. I wish this imminence ability had more of a like -1 circumstance penalty to melee attacks against you, and a -1 circumstance to DCs against any deception or diplomacy rolls against them. I just wish it had a non-combat effect, because I feel like Exemplar is so heavy combat coded that they're gonna suffer like Fighter in the fact that they don't do anything really outside of combat, which would be really rough, especially for another class to kind of suffer with it. Either way, -1 penalty. This is just essentially a bonus to your AC. It's only for melee attacks, but still, that's really good. That's a very powerful icon effect. The Transcendent ability is Captivating Charm. For 2 actions, you focus your attention on a creature within 30 feet, and you overwhelm their senses. They must make a will save against your class DC or be fascinated by you until the start of your next turn. This condition ends if you use a hostile action against them, but not if you use a hostile action against their allies. Really good. Fascination is okay. Not my favorite condition in the game, but for 2 actions, this can be really good. And I think that this is a good way to lock down an enemy. Overall, a really good one, a very surprisingly defensive one, if I was to be honest. All right, gaze sharp as steel, another eye or face based one. Very interesting. So, you have a particularly almost tangibly sharp glare. Your eminence ability allows you to sense enemies' attacks as soon as it begins, granting you a +1 status bonus to perception checks and +2 status bonus to your AC against ranged attacks. Really good in general. This one at least has benefit outside of combat, giving you a bonus to all perception checks. But the +2 AC against range attacks is very, very solid. I actually really, really like this one. The Transcendent ability is a singular action, really good. It has the prediction trait. So you take in every movement around you, allowing you to react to things you ordinarily couldn't. You gain reactive strike feat until the beginning of your next turn. I don't like this Transcendent ability. Like most marshals, Exemplar can at level 6 pick up the reactive strike, which is attack of opportunity if you're coming to the remaster. And then this Transcendent ability just becomes completely useless. Now, you do get the benefit of having whatever epithet you picked for your body at the beginning. So, there's a possibility that your, for instance, brave effect. Oh no, they don't. The epithet, I forgot. The body epithets don't give you eminence abilities or transcendent abilities. So that's actually extra rough. Uh, yeah. Though I will say that for a singular action, not only can you activate reactive strike, but you can move half your speed towards an enemy. So that has some synergy. But I don't like this one, especially because you can just get reactive strike as a feat if you really wanted it. But I guess it has some there are some ways it can be done well. I think this can be done well. I think it's just another one of the more kind of advanced ones, kind of like Peerless Under Heaven. In any regard, this one it's hard for me to like really get behind it, even though I know of the actual strategic benefits you can take with this one, and it also kind of gives you a feat if you use it every round. So I don't know, just something to keep in mind. Scar of the Survivor, a very interesting one. You have some kind of faded scar on your body that prevents all other scars from forming and tainting that part of your destiny. Imminence. It gives you a plus. It gives you the benefits of the Die Hard feat and a +1 status bonus to fort saving throws. Really good. You just get a feat from this as an eminence ability while it's active. I meant you don't have Die Hard unless this is active, just so you know. And you get a +1 status bonus to fort saving throws. Really good. Status is kind of unfortunate because there's so many things that give bonuses, like status bonuses to saving throws, but it's overall a decent effect. The Transcendent is really, really good though. So for a singular action, your wounds begin to knit together. You regain 1d8 hit points, and every odd level it goes up by another d8, which is really good. It's really good. You can actually do this twice in a round if you want to, because there's no limit. You can as long as you start the battle with it, you can shift, or you can use the healing. It goes to a different icon. Shift and then use the healing again, going to another icon. It's it's a really good way to get a lot of HP back. If you want to play like a regenerator tank, this is very powerful. Oh, you can't use it twice. My bad. I'm wrong. You can't use this twice because you can only use transcendent abilities once per round. But you can use it once per round real easily. It's only a singular action. And because of the benefits of your first epithet, this can be used in a lot of ways, even something as simple as striding up to half your speed if you're going brave. So I think this is a very powerful body icon. Skin hard as horn, another really good one. So its imminence ability gives you resistance to bludgeoning, slashing, or piercing damage equal to half your level. When you when you select this icon, you select what type of damage it is, and it can't be changed thereafter. It's a part of your story. This resistance doesn't apply against critical hits, which successfully find your unprotected spot. I love this. This is kind of the Achilles heel, or Sigfrid's uh like weak spot, more or less. I like that critical hits do get through this, even though that kind of sucks for an ability. I love the narrative flair behind it. And as a level 1 pickup, you can just get resistance to half your level, rounding up to that type of damage. That's really good. The transcendent ability, Crash Against Me, is also really good. What it does is, if a creature fails a melee attack roll against you using a weapon doing the same damage type as your resistance, or they succeed but the damage they would dealt is reduced to 0, the weapon clangs wildly off your skin with a painful reverberation, making the attacking enemy off guard and applying a -2 circumstance penalty to attacks with that weapon until the beginning of their next turn. That's really good. A single action, you toughen your skin up. The best part about this is you use this and you're still getting the benefits of essentially your imminence ability for the next round, even though your icon is going to shift to or your spark is going to shift to a different icon. So there's actually no loss even in the imminence ability, because not only do you get the benefits of the imminence ability, but it also increases to your level as far as the resistance it gives, which I don't think I mentioned that before. But yeah, so when you use this, your resistance increases to your level. And that's really good, honestly speaking. That's just a very solid overall icon that has very few downsides. All right, weapon icons. Now, when you select a weapon icon, the weapon that you use must use the traits based here. But you can easily, it takes a singular day of downtime to essentially bathe a new item, whether it's a new worn or weapon item in your divinity, essentially. But you can change weapons as an exemplar. You don't get a weapon at like level 1 that you can never change. If you get another weapon that more than likely applies to your current weapon icon effect, you can change to that weapon, which is really cool. So, but Barrow's Edge, or Barrow's Edge, it is a slashing or piercing, damaging melee weapon. I love this effect. The blade rattles in its scabbard as if it wants to be unsheathed to consume violence. Really good. The imminence ability. Your weapon deals 1 persistent spirit damage per weapon damage die to creatures it strikes. And if you are level 5 and you have your second epithet, this spirit damage can actually be changed to whatever your epithet changes it to, which potentially can proc enemy weaknesses, if especially if it's something like bludgeoning, which a lot of enemies actually have weakness to bludgeoning. Really, really good. Now, this is to any creature it strikes, which is really good. This just allows you to drop a bunch of persistent damage on enemies in the battlefield. A very powerful effect. The Transcendent ability is really good. Drink of My Foe is a single action, and it requires that your last action was a successful strike with the Borrow's Edge. So, well, obviously, you must have your weapon. I don't know why they specified the Borrow's Edge at the end here, but whatever. Anyway, effect. Your blade glows as it absorbs your foe's vitality. You regain hit points equal to half the damage dealt. Really good. Really good. Would stack really, really well with Scar of the Survivor. There's a very good potential tank build in here if you really want to go that way, which I do like. And that kind of counters the whole only wearing light armor. But again, if you don't take these, you're obviously going to have a little bit more trouble when it comes to staying alive. Overall, Borrow's Edge is really, really good. Fated Shot. This requires a ranged weapon. When you fire, or during your eminence, your weapon deals 1 additional spirit damage per weapon damage die to creatures it strikes. So it makes ranged weapons do even more spirit damage, which is very solid. And then its effect is actually very powerful. Rain of 7 Lights. It's 2 actions. You fire a projectile into the air, which makes a 5-foot burst, so essentially a 10-foot by 10-foot cube on the battlefield, within 60 feet. Each creature in that area must make a basic reflex saving throw against you or take spirit damage equal to your normal strike damage with your weapon. So that's just an area attack that just is a weapon area attack. It's really good. If your weapon icon has the deadly or fatal trait, then and when an enemy critically fails their save against the effect, roll the spirit damage as if adjusted for the fatal or deadly, which is also really good. You can choose before using this ability to give it the non-lethal trait, in which case, a creature that's reduced to 0 hit points places them into a dreamless slumber. A very good one, a very interesting one. Overall, this one's good for ranged weapons, does extra damage, gives you a really good 2-action multi-hit attack, essentially. And with the ability to make it non-lethal if you want, there's a lot of uses for Fated Shot. I think this is a really good weapon icon. Gleaming Blade, any weapon in the sword or knife group. So this one's a very broad category, in my opinion. So the Imminence ability, your weapon deals 2 additional spirit damage per weapon die to creatures that strike. Now, I will say that when you compare 2 damage to the 1 damage for Fated Shot, the thing you have to consider is that melee weapons require use of stride typically to get into range, while range weapons don't. So range weapons typically have a better action economy and thus can hit enemies more frequently. So these are about even as far as like the game's overall math is concerned. For any of you who are doing the math, just understand action economy wise, Fated Shot, you're more likely to get the additional spirit damage than Gleaming Blade is. So the strike is very, very powerful. Mirrored Spirit Strike, 2 actions. Make 2 strikes with your weapon icon, each using your current weapon attack multi-attack penalty. Both strikes must be on the same target. If the strikes are made with a weapon that doesn't have the agile trait, the second strike takes a -2 penalty. If both attacks hit, you combine their damage, which is all dealt as spirit damage. You add any precision damage only once. Combine the damage from both strikes and apply resistance and weakness only once. This counts as 2 attacks when it's essentially it's essentially the double slice that fighter gets. Only with a single weapon, you attack twice. If that weapon isn't agile, it takes a -2 on the second one. Important to know. But remember, each of these strikes deal 2 additional spirit damage. And it does suck that any precision damage you deal is only dealt once. So if you're kind of going for a backstab kind of build, it doesn't really apply extra. And you combine the damage and you can make it bypass physical resistance because it all becomes spirit. And even if you don't want it to do spirit damage, if you have the weapon epithet, you can likely do some other type. If you have Peerless Under Heaven, for instance, the weapon will just do whatever damage the weapon would instead. So that's all really good. Gleaming Blade is very, very powerful. It's essentially a 2-action multi-attack on the same enemy without increasing your multi-attack penalty. And even if the weapon isn't agile, -2 on the second strike is really not that bad, actually. So Gleaming Blade is very powerful if you, especially if you want to go great sword or some kind of good like sword build. But even for a knife group weapon, I think this is also very, very powerful. The Noble Branch. This is just, you have a stick that you've held with you forever, and it's really good. So this is any weapon in the spear or polearm weapon group, a staff, bow staff, fighting stick, or kara, which I think is a book from the Impossible Lands. It's a weapon from the Impossible Lands. Essentially a bow-like weapon, bow staff-like weapon. Really good. I actually really like this one. Also, spears and polearms. Man, we need more spear and polearm stuff. Really good. This one also does an additional 2 spirit damage per weapon die to enemies it strikes, so same as Gleaming Blade. And its transcendent ability is Breath Rend. Really, or Strike, Breathe, Rend. Really good. It's a single action. It requires that your last action was a successful strike with a weapon that qualifies for Noble Branch. You channel a pulse of energy down your weapon at the moment of contact. The target of the required strike takes spirit damage equal to your weapon damage dice. That is really good. So it's you strike an enemy, and if you succeed, you can just spend an action to do an additional damage die from your weapon in spirit damage to the enemy. This is really good. I don't know if it's as good as Mirrored Spirit Strike, as even though it's 2 actions, you're just likely to do 2 hits worth. And this one is technically already 2 actions because you had to strike an enemy and then use an action to get this extra effect. So, in my opinion, it's less risky, but overall just less damage than Mirrored Spirit Strike. So, I feel like that's kind of bad. Granted, a lot of pole weapons have reach, so this has some weapon group benefits over Gleaming Blade. I think it overall balances out, but pure damage potential, I think it goes to Gleaming Blade over Noble Branch. But I do thoroughly enjoy Noble Branch, and I like this rend effect that you can do. It's just automatic extra damage, which it's kind of hard to beat, honestly. Titan's Breaker. All the dwarf exemplars are going to love this one. Any weapon in the club, hammer, or axe group. You wield weapons that shatters mountains easily. Really cool. Your weapon deals 2 additional spirit damage per weapon damage dice to creatures it strikes, same as the other 2. But it also, constructs are not immune to the spirit damage, and this spirit damage automatically bypasses any hardness they have. This is actually technically a better eminence ability than the other 2 because one, spirit damage can affect things that don't typically have a spirit, well, constructs specifically, and it automatically bypasses their hardness, which is very, very good. That's a very powerful effect. And Fracture the Mountains, their transcendent ability, is also very powerful. Your spirit is so dense that it takes tangible force. Make a melee strike with your weapon icon. This counts as 2. This is essentially a power attack. So if the strike hits, you deal an additional spirit damage equal to 4 plus an extra die of weapon damage dice. It's actually more powerful than power strike. If you're at least 10th level, it's 6 plus 2 extra dice. And if you're 18th level, it's 8 plus 3 extra dice. Constructs and any objects are not immune to the spirit damage dealt by this attack, and this spirit damage automatically bypasses the hardness they have. This is really good for just destroying construct enemies or objects in general that have the construct trait. Anyway, I shall mention. Very, very powerful effect. This one hits really, really hard. The only problem is it's dependent on a singular strike, unlike the Gleaming Blade. So you can miss and just make an impact on the ground, a big crater in the ground, which I think is really cool, but it has that kind of accuracy problem that the other 2 don't. Regardless, the damage output is nuts and is almost completely unbeatable, especially at later level. It's really, really good. Fracture Mountains is very, very powerful. All right. The last category, Worn Icons, which their epithet is until level 15, so keep that in mind. Palisade Bangles is nuts. It's a very powerful one. So the Palisade Bangles, you have a 15-foot aura that protects you and all allies with an aura, granting them a +1 circumstance bonus to AC. Now you're saying, oh, circumstance bonus. That means if I raise shield, I just lose this benefit. Wrong, because this accounts for that. If anyone in that aura is benefiting from either a buckler or a shield, they get the additional circumstance bonus stacked on top. This is really good if you want to go like a whole team of Spartans and one of them is Leonidas who has this effect. I think it's very, very powerful. There's some really cool team comps that can be done with Palisade Bangles, and the effect is really good. Not only that, but while you have this active, you're essentially always benefiting from a +1 circumstance bonus to your AC, which, when combined with the beauty mark, gives you equivalently a +2 AC all the time without the expenditure of an extra action. Well, no, never mind. I'm dumb. Obviously, you can't do that because you can't have 2 icons activated at once. It's confusing, okay? There's a lot going on here, and I'm trying to compile data as we go. Regardless, even if you combine them with the beauty mark, this means that no matter like if you're using your Warren or your body icon, you're essentially always getting a bonus to your AC, which I think is very cool. The Transcendent ability is very interesting. You draw an enemy within the aura into your reach, moving them directly to you into a square within your melee reach unless they succeed a fort save against your class DC. Now, I find this one is fun, but it's a 15-foot aura, so the enemy is at most there's 10 or 15 feet away from you. So this singular action to draw an enemy into you could just be a stride action or even a step action in a lot of situations to do it. It's good for dispositioning an enemy, but then you lose the benefits of your imminence because it's a transcendent ability. So yeah, and they can resist it, which means you lose your transcendent ability and they might not be moved anyway. So Embrace of Destiny is not a very good transcendent ability in my mind, but the imminence ability more than makes up for it. All right, the Sky Bearer's Belt. This is a worn belt item. Oh yeah, I should mention these are bracers. These are belt. That is important for worn magic items. So make sure that whenever you get a new worn magic item, that you change your whatever your icon is to that one. So it will take a day of downtime, just so you know. So the belt, it's aura. Everyone in your aura, which is 15 feet, can carry four bulk more before becoming encumbered, and 8 more bulk before before hitting their maximum encumbrance. You, but not your allies, can attempt to disarm, grapple, shove, or trip creatures up to 2 sizes larger than you. So this imminence effect essentially gives you Titan Wrestler. Very decent effect overall. I don't know. This imminence ability is very passive and not very useful in a lot of things. The combat effectiveness is questionable. I mean, you can just take Titan Wrestler. So imminence ability is not that great. But the Skybearer's Belt does have one of the funnest transcendent abilities in my mind. For 2 actions, you move with a speed, belying your strength, carrying your allies as easily as straw dolls. You stride. At any point you are adjacent to a willing ally, you can pick them up, and you can deposit them into an adjacent square at any point during your movement. If an ally was benefiting from your aura when you began this movement, they don't count against your bulk limit while being carried this way. So for 2 actions, you can carry all your allies who are in your aura up to your stride distance and then drop them off at any point. That's really good. That's really, really good. I think that's a very powerful effect. And because you don't lose your transcendent ability until after the movement is done, you are benefiting from the +4 extra bulk or +8 max bulk, meaning that if you do pick up any allies who weren't in your aura, you're still very likely to do so. This is the beep beep I'm a bus item, but I love it. I think this is really cool. And the fact that you can move essentially your whole team is really cool. It's it's a very fun one. Skybearer's Belt is just an absolutely fun time. Thousand League Sandals, worn shoes, important to keep in mind. Aura effect. You and all allies within a 15-foot aura gain a +10 status bonus to your speeds. A normally very powerful effect, but so many classes get a status bonus to speed, that this honestly either doesn't affect them or just overrides their own class ability, which sucks. But at least for yourself, you get a plus 10-foot status bonus to speed while you have your Divine Spark in your shoes, which is very good. And then Marathon Dash is very, very powerful. For one action, you stride, and each ally within your aura at the start of your movement can also stride as a reaction. So not the same effect as the Beat Beat Bust Skybearer's Belt, but this one allows for your team to all stride, and they don't have to end, where they could all scatter if that was what they really wanted to, as their reactions, of course. And this one is only a singular action, while Bear Allies Burdens is 2 actions. Overall, this one is just a highly superior movement-based one, at least for yourself, not necessarily for your allies, though it can benefit your allies if they're willing to give up their reaction. Victor's Wreath. This is worn headgear or a worn sash, so something to keep in mind. So, Eminence ability. You inspire your allies for greater glory. You and all allies within 15 feet gain a +1 status bonus to attack rolls. A free bless as an item? That's so good. That's very powerful. I really like this one. It's very, very good and can benefit everyone pretty much, because attack rolls also include things like any checks to grapple or trip an enemy, because those are also attack rolls, as well as spell attack rolls, because it doesn't mention what kind of strikes. So anything that has the attack trait gets a +1 status bonus. Very good, very powerful. And like I said, it's just a bless that you just have on. And you don't need to use 2 actions to cast. A singular action at most. Very good. The Transcendent ability, One Moment Till Glory, is a single action. You rally your allies. Each ally in your aura makes a new saving throw against a effect with a +2 status bonus against one ongoing native effect or condition they are currently affected by, even if that effect would not normally allow new saving throws. That is incredibly powerful. There's so many effects in the game where it's just like, you fail the check, well, you got this for a minute, no matter what. This just allows them to break that. This is almost a counteract effect, only actually better. It's just really good. This is very, very solid. Victor's Wreath is a very powerful worn icon, in my opinion. And there's just no way you can say otherwise. It's just very good defensively speaking, and it even gives good offensive bonuses as well. A very good all-rounder icon. All right. I know we're an hour in, but we're going to do the feats. Man, I was silly when I thought this would be shorter than Animist. The only saving grace is a lot of these are shorter than the Animist feats by a fair amount. So, small victories. First level feat. Sanctified Soul. You draw a line in the sand in the cosmic struggle between good and evil and a chosen side. You gain either the holy trait or unholy trait. All your exemplar abilities that deal spirit damage also will gain the sanctified trait, allowing you to apply your holy or unholy trait to make them better against your chosen enemies. Sanctified Soul essentially just allows you to choose a divine side rather than being neutral. Your spirit damage gains the holy or unholy trait and becomes sanctified. Sanctified does specific damage against enemies who have sanctified traits. So, really good against fighting other divine entities. A very good one. Twin Stars. This is a very interesting one. So it does state typically that your spirit is indivisible. It can't be split between multiple items. What Twin Stars does is, if you have a one-handed weapon icon, and pretty much this is, in my opinion, if you have a one-handed weapon icon, you're going to take Twin Stars. There's no reason not to, unless you're going sword and board, I guess. But for a singular action, you split your weapon icon into 2 copies of itself, and it treats both of them as your current active icon. As these are both manifestations of the same object, your Divine Spark empowers the 2 halves as if they are a single icon. Now, I am trying to read here. You split your weapon icon into 2 copies of these, such as you can use this ability again to fuse them back into 2 halves. These are both manifestations of the same object. Your divine spark empowers the two halves as if they were a single icon. Yeah. So, uh, very interesting. This doesn't have a time limit. It doesn't actually even require that your weapon icon is uh currently in eminence. So it doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter if your weapon is your current active icon or not. You can just be dual wielding your same weapon, which is really good. And because you split your weapon, it's two copies, they're exactly identical. So this even allows you to save on things like the doubling rings or getting multiple runes for a different weapon. This is really good if you want to go dual wielding. I can see a lot of people picking up twin stars, a very powerful one and one that works very, very well. Vow of Mortal Defiance. It's a singular action, and it has the auditory concentrate, linguistic, and mental traits. This is very interesting because essentially this is the opposite of Sanctified Soul. So for an action, you swear a vow to defeat one creature within 60 feet that has either the holy or unholy trait. The first time each round you deal damage to that creature, you deal an additional d6 spirit damage. You cannot use Vow of Mortal Defiance against again until you or your target is defeated, flees, or the encounter ends. It says you or the target, which I think it's meant to be you or the target. If you take this feat, you cannot become sanctified with the holy or unholy trait. Retraining out of this feat typically requires a major change of philosophy. So you cannot take Sanctified Soul. And Vow of Mortal Defiance is really cool because it's essentially a hunt prey. You hunt a target within 60 feet, and every time you hit them, they take an additional d6 spirit damage. A very powerful effect, and very interesting because it has a lot of other feats that it actually isn't compatible with. I like the lore behind this one, and I like the effects behind this one. And, of course, any spirit damage you deal. Well, I guess uh, for the weapons, let me double check something real quick. You can choose any spirit damage dealt by your exemplar abilities to instead manifest. Okay, so it says the exemplar trait. So this particular one, this spirit damage can also be changed to whatever your weapon epithet changes it to, which is very good to know because this is an exemplar ability, plain and simple. All right, level 2, claim initiate domain. You get a domain. You get a spell domain and a focus point. You don't have to pick from any domain from a deity, so you can just have whatever domain you want, which I think is really, really cool. And it goes over all the rules for what focus points do, yada yada. You can select this feat multiple times. It doesn't have a limit. You can just have a bunch of domain focus spells if you really want to from domains everywhere. Granted, having any more than 3 is, not necessarily a good thing, but still, I do love this, and I do love the ability to get some extra casting. And this class does lean itself towards it because you do eventually get up to master proficiency with your domain spells, which is really cool. Leap the Falls. This is a very interesting one. Your body icon gains a new eminence ability, which gives you powerful leap and quick jump skill feats. So you get 2 skill feats for 1 class feat. Is that worth it? I don't know. And it only works when you have your body eminence going on, but it can work. I can definitely see powerful leap and quick jump being used for a lot of things in certain builds, especially considering brave allows you to like stride up to half your speed. You can just get a lot of mobility with this one. So it's not a great feat, but I do see some potential in it at least. Thorns of Mortality, a very interesting one. So your weapon icon gains a new eminence ability. When you successfully damage an enemy with your weapon icon, your power lingers within them, taking the form of barbs and thorns that dig in to prevent healing. When the target would regain hit points, such as from a healing effect or an ability like fast healing or regeneration, it must make a will save against your class DC. These barbs dissipate after a minute, and also after they make the save, the barbs will disappear. This is a very cool effect if you are worried about your enemies healing, which if your enemies are healing a lot, you're DM is probably a dick. But uh I do like this effect. If they succeed the check, they're fully healed. Nothing changes. If they fail the check, they only regain half the hit points. If they crit fail, they regain no hit points. This is good because it can potentially slow an enemy who is a big regenerator, which that does happen from time to time in most adventures. So I will say Thorns of Mortality is a pretty decent one to pick up, especially because it just empowers your weapon icon, which, you're probably already going to be using a lot anyway. So this is just a good added effect. All right, 4th level. Hurl at the Horizon. One I absolutely love. I just wish it was a little bit better. So this is your weapon icon is either a thrown or a melee weapon. Your weapon gains a thrown 15 feet. Blah. Your weapon gains the thrown 15 feet trait, or its thrown distance is increased by 10 feet if it already has the thrown trait. I like this one because it allows you could take a massive like war club and chuck it at people within 15 feet, which is really cool. The only bad part is it doesn't fly back to your hand, but there's ways to fix that, obviously. So I like this one. I think it also can make some of the other weapon icons work better for you. Because if you yeah, and as well, it's just an added eminence ability. I just wish that if the weapon was already thrown, it let you do it further, like twice your weapon's thrown distance. But whatever, 10 feet, I guess, is good. In any regard, I do really like Hurl at the Horizon. I don't know if it's going to be a very common one, but at the very least, getting your normal melee weapon icon to get a 15-foot thrown trait is pretty good, actually. All right. A 4th level feat. Only the Worthy. This is the Thor's Hammer effect. So essentially, you can take your weapon icon and you can release it. Oh, it's either your weapon icon or your worn icon. You can release it and spend an action to command it to remain motionless. The enemy needs to be able to either lift 8,000 pounds or a creature can attempt to move it using the Force Open Athletics action, which has a DC equal to your class DC. Now, I don't know how that makes sense because at level 4, right, no matter what a creature does, it shouldn't be able to move something that has 8,000 pounds worth of pressure. Uh, Even with an athletics DC, which is actually not a very hard, there's a lot of enemies in the game that have actually a decent athletics. So that kind of doesn't make sense to me personally. I do like the effect, and if you can also apply this to a creature that is next to you in prone. If a creature is next to you in prone, the creature can't do anything unless it succeeds at an athletic check to stand or to move. The icon automatically flies back to your hand when the effect is broken, or if you spend an interact action to hold out your hand to draw it back. If it's your worn icon, that's kind of silly, because that means you still have to, like, I guess, put it on as an action. I would say it should fly back onto you, like if it's the Bengals, for instance, they just fly back onto your arm or whatever. In any regard, this one is a lot of fun. It's kind of silly, and at least it makes a really good 8,000 pound paperweight in some situations. But the fact that some enemies can move it with just a simple force open check against your class DC is kind of silly to me. I wish they would give it a bump to the DC, like a +2, even a +4, honestly, to move the item. But I guess that'd make it harder if you pinned an enemy with it. I don't know. In any case, I do like this one, but it is a little silly. All right, Through the Needle's Eye. Your weapon icon is a ranged weapon. So, no thrown weapons, only ranged weapons. Uh, this gives your weapon a new transcend effect. 2 actions: make a strike with your weapon icon. If the strike is successful, the target must make a fort save against your class CC or become blind for 1 round, or until they use an interact action to clear the blood from their vision. Really good. You can shoot an enemy for 2 actions and make them go blind on a fort save. I don't know if I would use this one quite a lot. There's a lot writing on that singular strike. And if the enemy just makes the check, then nothing happens anyway. but it does have some effects, and blind is very powerful. And for a 4th level feat to give blind, that is powerful at 4th level. I just don't know if it would scale up very well later. Either way, this is at least a good one if you have a ranged icon that you want to empower. All right, 6th level, Motionless Cutter. Your weapon is a melee weapon that deals slashing damage, so really good for the Gleaming Blade one specifically. Your weapon gains a new Transcendent ability. This is 3 actions, severing 4 Dragonfly Wings. You make a strike with your weapon icon. If the strike is successful, you can make another immediate strike against another target within your reach. Your multiple attack penalty doesn't apply, but you do put a -2 penalty on the attack roll for each attack other than to each other attack you have made this turn. You can continue making strikes in this manner until a total of 4 strikes or until you miss. So, TLDR, this allows you to strike multiple, up to 4 enemies near you, not using multi-attack penalty reduction, but instead -2 for each additional attack. So you make your normal one at your max penalty, or at a -2 if you used a quickened action to strike first. In which case it would be -7. Actually, not a good way to do it. Just do this with your first attack. Your first attack is normal. Your second attack -2, third attack -4, and last attack -6. You can strike 4 enemies with 3 actions. It's a lot of bank. 3 actions is a lot to gamble on hitting a bunch of enemies, and they all have to be within reach, and you can't strike the same enemy multiple times. But there are ways this can be done. If you have a good polearm weapon that has slashing, this can be really good as well. So I will say this one's very situational, but I can see the use in it. Reactive Strike. Very simple. You get Reactive Strike. So kind of what I mentioned before, that one particular body icon that you can transcend to give you Reactive Strike, you can just take the feat instead and probably get a better body icon. But I don't know. All right, Binding Serpent Celestial Arrow. Your weapon icon is range or has the thrown trait. Very important, and you can give your weapon the thrown trait with Hurl at the Horizon at level 4. So that's also any weapon can technically qualify for this if you take Hurl at the Horizon. Well, let's see. Actually, I don't know if it qualifies. That's interesting. I would say it would have to, but it might not technically qualify because you don't get the thrown trait on your weapon unless the imminence is in effect, which might not apply for feat requirements. That's a GM decision. I would allow it, but I can see why a GM wouldn't. Anyway, 2 actions. Your weapon gets a new Transcendent ability. Make a strike with your weapon. If the strike is successful and deals damage, the target must make a reflex save against your class DC, or the arrow transforms into a multitude of ethereal snakes that coil around the target, immobilizing it until it succeeds an escape attempt against your class DC. A very good effect, especially if you're a ranged character who wants to keep enemies away from you. Overall, I think this one's very solid. There's not a lot to it. Really good against slow enemies, not good against fast enemies. It's a pretty decent one, in my opinion. All right, level 8. Additional icon. You can have a 4th icon, and it can be of any other type. So, yeah, I think that's very good. It's really good, especially if you want to dual wield weapons, for instance, and you want to have 2 different icons and you don't want to use the twin star from before. So that's really good. Or you can have multiple worn equipments, for instance, or even multiple body tattoos. In all honesty, the only thing is, of course, if it's a different item, your spark can't be split between them. So if you pick another body icon, you have to choose which one when you shift your divine spark into one of them. So that's something to keep in mind. I do like this one, just gives you more options. I think the cost already gets enough as already, so I don't know if this one's very, very handy, but it gives you more options, which is never a bad thing. Claim advanced domain. You can claim an advanced domain based on the domain you picked before. Really good. You can select this one multiple times, picking an advanced domain spell for each domain in which you have the initial domain spell. So really good. Gives you more domain spell casting. I think this is thoroughly good. Really good for upgrading one if you have one you like in particular. I think there's a lot of ways domains can fit into Exemplar and work really, really well. So keep an eye on that. Look at domain spells when you're making your Exemplars. I think there's a lot of ways you can really empower your playstyle with domain spells. All right, Dominion Signifier. This requires you have the Dominion epithet. The Dominion epithets are the weapon ones, I believe. Yes. So the Dominion epithet, your weapon that does change damage gives you a different one. So the Born of Bones of the Earth normally gives you bludgeoning. You can now select fire instead of bludgeoning for the damage you deal with your spirit damage. Restless as the Tide gives you acid damage. Peerless Under Heaven gives you void damage, which is actually pretty nutty. I do like that one. So Peerless Under Heaven gets a really cool one with void damage. Giving it the most, it can go with piercing, slashing, bludgeoning, or void damage, depending on what weapon you're wielding. Very cool. And then, of course, Whose Cry is Thunder gives you sonic damage. Sonic being one of the least resisted types of damage in the game makes it a very good one. All right, 10th level, we're halfway done. Oh, this is going to be longer than Animists. I never thought of... Anyway, whatever. Fish falls from the Fish from the Fall's Edge. My goodness. It's a reaction. The trigger is a living creature within 30 feet would die, and you can do this once per day. So as a reaction, once per day, you can prevent that creature from dying, and that creature immediately gets 5d8 hit points, standing them back up. The ally is then invigorated by the touch of your divine power, gaining a +1 status bonus to their saving throws and AC for 1 round. Your divine spark remains with your ally, preventing you from gaining any of your icon's eminence effects until the start of your next turn, when it returns to an icon of your choice. So that's actually not a super terrible one. You could lose like a worn aura effect, so it's something to keep in mind. But there's a lot of times where I feel like this is just really good. This just makes it hard for your allies to die. Honestly, it's pretty strong in all opinions. Fish from the Fall's Edge, I think, is a very good supporty style of feat. And I do like the Exemplar does have a good amount of support in their kit. So that if you want to play a more supporty style Exemplar, you could. You don't have to be necessarily the Kukulin or the Maui who just does, hits hard and hits and is a warrior. Something I just really enjoy. Journey of the Sky Chariot. This is a very cool one, and I like this one a lot. So this one empowers your worn icon, and your worn icon, when it's active, gives you a flight speed of 20 feet, and it's a 10th level feat. Now, you've heard me complain many times in prior videos about like Kineticist or other classes that can get infinite flight at a pretty early level. Even level 10 is relatively early. This one I'm completely fine with because it's 20 feet. It's a 20-foot flight speed. Flying up is difficult terrain. Remember, flying up is difficult terrain unless you have superior flight or whatever it's called. So you can fly up 10 feet at most with this, which is not a lot of flight. Granted, it does provide like infinite flight, but because you're not as fast, there's a lot of ways that this can kind of even be played against you in those situations. So I really like this one. This is infinite flight at a lower level that I really agree with, and it works overall for me. So overall, a really cool feat. I like this one. Just gives you flight, and for a martial class, a very martial class, in fact, getting a flight feat is very powerful and kind of puts it above even something like fighter as far as like fight dynamics. So a very powerful feat. All right, mated birds in paired flights. With these feats, man, they're very poetic, I'll say. So a 10th level feat, you have 2 weapon icons, and both icons have the throne traits. So this can be used with split twin stars, or if you select a second weapon icon with the 8th level feats, then they both need to be thrown. So this gives your weapons an additional imminent and a transcendent effect. Imminence. As long as you hold one icon, the other will return to find its partner. Both icons gain the effect of the returning rune. Really good. And as well, rejoin in flight. You throw your weapon icons to either side of a creature. They seek each other out, converging on the target. Make 2 thrown strikes against a target within the first range increment of your weapon icons, each at your current multi-attack penalty. The target is flanked for both attacks. Typically, this gives them the off-guard status condition. And if both hit, the target also takes additional die of weapon damage. The weapons then return to your hand. This is really cool. I like this one. And even if you have 2 actually different icons, not the twin stars, it gives them the eminence ability regardless. And the twin flight, or the rejoin in flight for the twin strike, just uses both your icons anyway. So really cool, very interesting. The only thing that I will mention on this is this will, if you critical strike, the critical strike only gets the imminence effect for the weapon that is currently embedded with the spark. So if you're currently embedded, like if your current weapon icon hits and the other weapon icon that is not the twin star one crit hits, the other one doesn't get any effects that affect the critical specializations from imminence that that weapon normally would have. So that's the only thing I will mention as like an added level of complexity. But I do like this one, and it makes the throne build really, really good for Exemplar. All right. 12th level, Compliant Gold. Your weapon icon is a melee weapon. You can command your weapon to shrink or grow. Even if your icon is not empowered, you can shrink it to a negligible size and keep it tucked behind your ear, in your hair, or in a similar discrete location. You can shrink your weapon or regrow it to its normal size as a part of drawing or stowing the weapon normally. So I love the fact that you can shrink your weapon and hide it as just a standard effect, whether the weapon is your current like embedded icon or not. And its imminent effect is really cool. If your icon gains the reach trait, if it already had the reach trait, it increases your reach by an additional 10 feet instead of using the usual additional 5 feet. So if you have a reach weapon that is, that gives you 10 feet of reach, it gives you 20 feet of reach, not 15 like you normally get when the weapon gets the reach trait added on. So that's very good. There's a lot of really, really good reach builds that can be done with this one. And the transcendent ability your weapon gets is even better. Your icon extends to an impossible length, striking all in its way. You deal 6d8 damage to all creatures in a 60-foot line on a basic reflex saving throw. The damage type matches that of your weapon. At 14th level and every 2 levels after that, the damage increases by an additional d8. So this is very, very powerful. I will say overall, it's a good line effect that you can do. I think of Gin Ichimaru from Bleach, his sword that can like extend a mile. This is kind of the same effect. Not to the same degree, I guess, but I like the idea behind it. I like the fantasy that comes behind it. So overall, I really like Compliant Gold. Extract Vow of Non-Violence. 2 actions. This is a very interesting one. So for 2 actions, you can attempt a diplomacy check to request or intimidate a weapon within 60 feet. Even though most weapons are inanimate and mindless, your words somehow still affect them as if they were living and share a language. The DC for this check is either will DC or a moderate DC of the weapon's level. The object is then temporarily immune to extract a vow of nonviolence for 1 day. So you can intimidate the enemy's weapon. And what happens is if you get a critical success, the weapon will not harm you. You gain resistance to all damage dealt by the specific weapon for 10 minutes as the weapon attempts to mitigate damage it deals to you. The resistance is equal to half your level. And on a success, each time the weapon hits you, the time is reduced by a minute. So every time up to 10 times, it's reduced. I wish it would just prevent the enemy from doing damage to you, honestly. But I understand that would be too powerful in a lot of circumstances. Resistance equal to half your level. I wish it was resistance equal to your level, considering this requires a check. In fact, when the actual feat releases, I would not be surprised if doesn't equal your level or your level plus con modifier, as that's a lot of damage. Granted, it is all damage dealt, so if the weapon does multiple types of damages, they will resist all of them, which is very powerful. Also, a very fun effect and a nod towards Balder from Norse mythology. But when you gain this feat, choose Cold Iron, Darkwood, Dawn Silver, or Silver. For some reason, perhaps because you underestimate this material or you think it's a friend, you are forever unable to extract a vow of nonviolence from this material. So you select a specific material, and from that point forward, you cannot use this feat on weapons of that material. Very fun, very interesting. Not many enemies use weapons, maybe silver weapons, but not many enemies use like Dawn Silver or Darkwood. So a very negligent downside to this one. Overall, I thoroughly enjoy this feat. I think it's really, really cool. The Battle Rage Cuchulainn. I forget what it's called. It's the Battle Rage, though, if you are familiar with Cuchulainn's mythology. Warped by Rage. So your body icon gains a new eminence and transcendence. When you go into eminence, you gain the effects of the 4th rank enlarge spell, which is pretty nuts, making you huge and do extra damage. And then Spasm of the Berserker. So for a singular action, your body warps beyond recognition into a powerful one-eyed form. You remain under the effects of Enlarge and also gain the effects of the 6th rank Moon Frenzy until the end of your next turn, except that you can't attempt to end the effect early. I believe Moon Frenzy makes you confused. I won't look at it here, but I do believe this gives you a chance to possibly hurt your friends. Keep that in mind, but I love this one. You just go ape on your enemies and destroy them with this. I think this is really cool, and plus, the fact that you can just grow as a part of your body icon's normal eminence makes this very, very powerful. It can make your Exemplar do massive amounts of damage, have massive amounts of reach. Warped by Rage is a very, very powerful feat. All right, 14th level, Destined Victory. Your Worn icon, so your garb icon, gains a new Eminence and Transcendent ability. The Eminence effect, whenever you successfully strike an enemy with a melee attack, you gain a +2 status bonus to AC checks against the next attack from the enemy before the start of your next turn. A really good one, and this one stacks. There's that aura that gives you a circumstance bonus to AC. This gives you a status bonus to AC. And there's that body icon that can give the enemy a penalty to AC. So that all in all, you can get a massive amount of AC against an enemy as long as you successfully struck them with a melee weapon. I'm sad that it doesn't say or unarmed strike, so it has to be a melee weapon. Very unfortunate. All right. Only you and I, a very good one. So you draw your foe into a fated battle between you two. Choose an enemy within reach. Until the end of your next turn, the enemy gains a +2 circumstance bonus to attack rolls it makes against you, but must make a will save whenever it tries to move away from you. Strike a target other than you or cast a spell that doesn't include you as a target. On failure, the target loses the actions or actions related to the failed attempt. Whenever the enemy misses you with a strike with this effect on, you heal 1d8 plus 5 hit points. So, TLDR, you draw an enemy into a battle. If they want to move away from you, they need to succeed on a will save, or if they want to do anything to anyone else, they need to make a will save against your class DC. They do get +2 circumstance bonus to hit you, but if they miss you, you get a d8 plus 5 hit points back every time they miss you. So yeah, that is a very, very fun and powerful effect and can make you a very dangerous brawler on the battlefield, locking enemies down and making it harder for them to move away or do anything else against you. Honestly, one of the best ways I've seen like a taunt implemented in a TTRPG. Infinite Blade Celestial Arrow. Your weapon is a ranged weapon or a weapon melee weapon with a thrown trait. So your weapon gains a new Eminence and Transcendent ability. The Eminence ability Cat is scratching her face and jiggling the mic or the camera. So, Imminence ability. Whenever you successfully strike an enemy with your weapon icon, up to 2 enemies adjacent to that target take spirit damage equal to your weapon icon's damage die as they are struck by duplicate missiles. Man, so as an Imminence ability, you can just strike multiple enemies that are up to 2 adjacent to your target and just deal weapon damage dice to them. That's really good, honestly. Well, not weapon spirit damage up to your weapon damage die size. Though, granted, as of course, the weapons can have different damage types, so this can be really, really good. And you can choose on each instance of damage what type of damage it is. So, again, very, very powerful. The Transcendent ability, Heaven Reigns an Ending. You fire an arrow that multiply, but what if you have a melee with the throne trait? I don't know. That multiplies into a dense cloud of weapons. Make a range strike against each enemy you are aware of within your first range increment. Each attack counts towards your multi-attack penalty, but do not increase your penalty until all the attacks are made. All damage dealt by these strikes is spirit damage. Oh my god, that's so powerful. There's weapons that have a range of 120 feet. There's weapons that essentially have a range of the battlefield most of the time. And for 3 actions, you just can attack everyone. It's not a cone. It's not anything. It's each enemy you are aware of within your weapon's first range increment. You fire and it attacks the whole battlefield. That is broken. I would say they need to change it to a cone or something, because even a cone that affects all enemies within a 60-foot cone, for instance, would still be powerful. This 3-action attack lets you attack all enemies on the battlefield with your current multi-attack penalty. That's that's too strong. That's actually too strong. That's a legitimately powerful effect. That is too powerful. That is going to get nerfed, I guarantee. Or it's going to be changed where it's like a cone or something, or a burst or whatever. Because all enemies you're aware of within the first range increment of your weapon. There's so many weapons that have such a big range increment. I don't know. Very, very powerful. 7-colored Cosmic Bridge. This is a very fun one. 16th level feat. Your Worn Garb, right? No, your weapon icon gains a new Imminent and Transcendent ability. So the Imminence ability, your weapon scatters rainbow color lights across nearby surroundings. When you make a successful strike on an enemy, you choose to teleport to an unoccupied location within 10 feet as a free action. It's a teleport. It means you do not move. So you can avoid enemies who do attack or who do reactive strikes on you. Very, very powerful, especially if you're playing a squishier rogue style of Exemplar. And the Transcendent ability, Fleeting Arc through Heaven and Earth, of what a name. 3 actions, you swing your blade in a wide arc, releasing a blazing rainbow that deals 8d6 spirit damage and 8d6 damage of the same type as your weapon to all enemies in a 60-foot cone with a basic fortitude save against your class CC. As the rainbow ripples out, you use it as a bridge to teleport to any location within the effects area. So this one is less damaging, potentially, than Transcend Heavy Rains and Ending, the Infinite Blade Celestial Aerial. But it does give you a free teleport to any range within a 60-foot cone. And all the enemies are likely to at least take some damage because it's a basic saving throw against your class DC. It's also 16d6 damage, I might add, which is a nutty amount of damage. So, very good. Very, very powerful. Oh man, Exemplar is just really powerful. All right, Strike, Rivers, Seas, Winds. You can only use this one once per hour, but you kind of. So, your character is so ridiculously strong that you have physical prowess that match magical abilities. So once per hour, you can use one of these effects, and each effect can't be used more than once per day. You can use a 4th rank version of Hydraulic Torrent, a 5th rank version of Control Water, a 6th rank version of Howling Blizzard, a 7th rank version of Volcanic Eruption, and an 8th rank version of Punishing Winds. Each you can do, you can do one of these once per hour, and each of these can only be done once per day. Creating these effects have the same type and number of actions as casting the spell, and they use the higher of your class DC or spell DC when appropriate. Because you are creating these effects with your godly might rather than casting a spell, they can't be dispelled or countered. So you just get effects that can't, you get spells that can't be countered. Granted, you're not going to have the best spell DCs or class DC in this situation. It's still really good, and it's just you punch the ground and a volcano like spew of lava erupts. It's just that's really cool. It's very powerful. Not an overpowered feat in my opinion, especially not compared to Infinite Blade Celestial Arrow, but a very powerful feat nonetheless. All right, 18th level. We're almost done. It's almost a 2-hour video. Oh no. All right. 18th level, Eternity Incinerating Blaze. Oh, I remember this one. A really cool feat. So your weapon icon gains a new Imminence and Transcendent ability. So the Imminence ability, your weapon burns away at the target's future. On a successful critical hit with the weapon, the target becomes doomed 1 or increases its doom condition by 1. If the target's maximum dying value is reduced to 0 by this ability, it immediately dies in a flash of spiritual fire that reduces its body to ash. Now, this is a very strange imminent ability. It sounds really cool, right? Essentially, you have to crit strike an enemy 4 times, and they just die. So if you can crit strike an enemy 4 times, they just die. But the problem is you have to crit strike an enemy 4 times. And doomed condition is something that typically is a condition that stacks better with the wounded condition, because doomed essentially takes up wounded slots, for instance, right? Most enemies, when they are reduced to 0 hit points, just die. They don't get wounded conditions. So the Imminence ability is more or less, if you can crit strike an enemy 4 times, they die. You just need to be able to crit strike an enemy 4 times. Incredibly powerful effect, but a powerful effect that you're not likely to use, and you have to pick which crit strike effect you get when you use Imminence weapon effects. So I don't think this is a very good Imminence effect, even though it sounds really, really cool. The Transcendent ability is very much different, though. So for 2 actions, you strike an enemy, and that deals an additional 3d8 spirit damage and 3d8 void damage. Not a lot of damage, especially considering some of the other Transcendent strikes we've seen before. But if the creature is reduced to 0 hit points, it's immediately killed. Not in the present, but in the recent past. If that creature killed a creature in the last round, that creature is then suddenly revived and regains 5d8 hit points. So you can you can revive someone by killing an enemy hard enough that you killed them in the past. That sounds so cool. And because Transcendent abilities, you can select which Transcendent ability you use. This is a really good one to pull out when you need to pull it out. I don't know if Eternity Incinerating Blaze is overall a good feat. It just feels like there's a lot of conflicting things here. But I will say that at the very least, it's really, really cool. I mean, hitting an enemy so hard that you kill them in the past is really nutty. Sunwrecker. Your weapon is capable of striking any light out of the sky. Your weapon gains the following abilities. So it's a weapon icon effect that gives a new Eminence and Transcendent ability. On a successful critical hit with a weapon, it creates a 2nd rank darkness effect centered on the target of the attack. So you strike an enemy so hard you destroy all light in the area. That's okay. What's really cool though is break the sun's legs. It's a 2-action transcendent ability. You make a slashing motion over the brightest source of light, whether it's a torch or the sun in the sky. A gash appears over the light source, visible to all, and devours the light. The entire area within a 120-foot burst around you takes the effects of a 9th rank darkness spell for 1 minute. The stolen light is channeled into your eyes, and you gain greater dark vision for the duration of the effects. That's broken! If the enemies don't have a greater dark vision, they're just blind. 120 feet is like the whole battlefield most of the time. 120-foot burst is the whole battlefield most of the time. You can just strike the sun. You can just attack the sun and just make everything go dark. It's really cool. Very powerful. It's a lot of fun. All right, 20th level, the final ones, and then we can be done. Holy moly. All right, cutting without a blade. This is a very strange one. So essentially, your icons disintegrate into golden light. You can place your divine spark into any object in your possession, even a non-threatening object like a single strand of grass. It transforms into a functional copy of your icon made out of pure divine radiance. You can do this as a free action immediately before or after striking, or otherwise using the icon. So yeah, this is a very strange one. For level 20th feat, essentially I don't know. Uh, it's good for showing off. You can kick someone's ass with a blade of grass if you really want to. Uh, I it I guess technically your icons can't be removed from you. It would be better to say they couldn't be like disarmed or whatever. I don't know. And the fact that as a free action immediately before or after striking with or otherwise using the icon, you can swap it out is interesting. I don't know about this one. Honestly, maybe y'all in the comments are smarter than me and can tell me what the real benefits for this one is. But for a level 20 feat, this just doesn't feel like it does anything. I guess if you have a non-returning thrown weapon, you can just draw or pick another blade of grass and draw your weapon out. I guess. I don't know. This seems strange. And also you can do this as a free action immediately before or after striking with or otherwise using the icon. Wait, with or otherwise using the icon. Oh, you can remove it so you can strike an enemy and then afterwards it can turn into the blade of grass or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. This seems really weird. This seems very fluffy and it seems like it doesn't have anything it does. It just a level 20 feat that lets you show off, which I don't like, honestly. I like the idea behind it. It just I wish it did something, you know. A place beyond mortality, a level 20 feat. You also need to have the claim advanced domain, and you can do this once per day, and you must have at least one focus point in your focus pool. So, you cease aging, and when you would die for any reason, you can immediately expend all your remaining focus points as a free action that can be taken at any time and regardless of your current conditions to survive at 0 hit points. Purge yourself of any negative conditions, and then when you do, you heal yourself up to your half your total HP. Stand back up in your current square, instantly summon your weapon icon to your hand, and shift your eminence to any of your icons. So yeah, this means that as long as you have a focus point, you can't die, and even if you would die, you would just return back to half your HP. Very good, very powerful. Not quite the same level, ironically, not the same level of immortality giving as the Animist has for their ability. But I mean, you can get a focus point back every 10 minutes. So you can just not die every 10 minutes. And you're not likely to die that frequently as a level 20 character. So again, equivalently, another immortality level 20 feat. Not that I have problems with that, just a powerful effect, honestly, and one that's I think way more worth taking than cutting without a blade. But that's it. We're 2 hours into this recording. Holy moly. I thoroughly enjoy the Exemplar. My overall thoughts are the Exemplar is a relatively simple class, simpler than some of the classes that have come out recently, that has a lot of oomph, a lot of power fantasy to it. Feels like it hits really hard. I don't feel like it takes up any other class spots. Unlike Animus, which I felt like was just taking a lot of the unique things other classes got, this one feels wholly unique. You do like extra damage, but not a ton of extra damage to make you anywhere near a barbarian. You don't get the same fighting proficiency that a fighter does. In fact, a fighter is likely to outduel, honestly, a demigod, which I think is kind of nutty. But I mean, the demigod does get you with some of its abilities, though. It can be really good. So Exemplar is not weak by any means. I think it does a lot of stuff very wholly uniquely. Unlike the Animus, which I mentioned before, it kind of felt like it was taking a lot of other class features and adding it all into one class. So overall, Exemplar is good. I think it's the better of the two classes in the playtest. I think there's a few things that need to be tweaked here or there, but otherwise, very solid. Also, I just really enjoy the idea of this class. But I'm sure you will all let me know your thoughts down in the description. Thank you all so much for watching, or the description, down in the comments. I hope you guys aren't writing in my descriptions. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Good luck with your games, and leave the bad luck to me. I'll see all you demigods next time. Bye.